Hi everybody, this is Breeden of Insanity Industries, and exciting days are here with the first video for the Insanity Industries YouTube channel. I've had some guys on to me for a while now about getting this up and running. They're also on to me to get Twitch up and running, which looks an awful lot more complicated than I'm capable of doing at the moment, although YouTube might be the streaming choice in the future anyway. That aside, decided to do the first test on last... try that again. I thought I would do the first video on last week's market insanity. We had stock markets crashing all around the world. We had central banks stepping in to pump liquidity into everything. We had the Chinese central banks selling off US treasuries like you wouldn't believe. We had all sorts of stuff all over the place, and there was massive panics. We had the three major indices in the United States all stop trading. So bad everything was going, and you would expect news like that would play absolute havoc in the currency markets, which I've maintained for a while. It was a lot more stable and consistent than stock markets, but you would still expect huge news like that to have a big effect in currency markets. So we're going to have a look at a few of those currency markets and see what we've got going on. And the first one I'm going to look at here is the Euro Kiwi, where we have what appears to be a large amount of movement along this side over here. We have, in fact, Monday's candle being 1700 pips, almost 1800 pips, which is a huge mover. The Euro Kiwi is a pretty big mover anyway. Low pip value, big movements, and I used to trade it a lot because its movements are quite predictable. They move in nice step patterns. They behave very nicely in a supply-demand, support-resistance sense. This looks like it may be a little different, so let's have a look and examine this. The first thing I notice is there's nothing over the left, so we're going to have to zoom out and have a bit of a look. There we go. So here we are all zoomed out, so we can see some chart action, and we're going to mark some pivots on here. These are, of course, support-resistance pivots, not mathematical pivots, which are, of course, a complete waste of time, and only an idiot would actually use something so retarded. And what else we got? We've got one across there nicely, which shows that. Okay. And as we can see here, now that we've marked those and we can zoom back in, we can see we had the pause and go, came up, went into the supply up here and retreated back from it all the way back to the next area in here, where the sell orders in here are overwhelmed and become buy orders because there's now buy orders in that area. Gee, so it looks really violent, but we see that it didn't actually do anything that it shouldn't have. We might have expected it to bounce around there, and that's in fact the line that it closes under is this sort of intermediate line going on in there. Trying to get that line straight. MT4 being wonderful for marking up charts. No, wait, the other thing. Anyway, so we can see that we've got the close back under that, and once the close was under that, it was always going to do that. The markets can only do a few things, and they play really nicely by these pivots. So there we go. It looks violent, but it didn't really do anything on the Euro NZ. UJ, which one of my students was complaining to me about earlier, that had a big chunk in movement. So let's zoom out so we can see that just a little better, and we'll see something really interesting, which is the pivot across here. Now we know the pivots across here. Look at that. We've got a huge amount of buy orders in this area here. We can't bust back below there, so that's a pivot. Fantastic. So that's holding. And we have, of course, this pivot across here. I'll just move that line up a touch. There we go. To where I actually want it drawn. And we can see that what happened is I can't be asked drawing all the way across there. We came out of there, we came back into the range in here, we travelled to the bottom, we bounced off, we came back up. it looks violent, but it didn't really do anything major. We could stick a line across there and we would notice that we, what a surprise, closed back inside that line exactly like it did on the Euro Kiwi, except in reverse here. So once again, it looks violent, and if you're trading this on a 5-minute chart, that would be absolute disaster. But I mean, as soon as you come out to a daily, these big news events just stop affecting you. Moving on, GU. And it's pretty clear that we have a pivot across here, which price comes out of, in what should have been a complete lack of surprise to everybody trading the GU. And we've got a pivot across here, in which we come down to all of the wonderful buy orders in this area. You can actually see it comes down and tags that pause and go quite nicely. So, nothing to see here. Moving on. AU. AU, let's see, what have we got? 260 pips on the AU, which is a pretty good movement, but yeah, that doesn't even look interesting, to be honest. And here's the UC. Now we know what happens when the chief goes crazy on news, and in fact we have a massive central bank de-intervention over here, and that just went crazy. What I find really funny about this de-intervention, just to really sort of point everybody out, have a look at that, will you? 2 months after decoupling from the euro, price is back to pretty much exactly where it was. That's something. Anyway, what do we have last week? Well, this is last week's move in here. Should we be surprised? Not really. And where have we come back up into? Well, that, gentlemen, is a pivot. And ladies. I mean, it's hard to tell. I mean, when you're trading, you have no idea what the gender of anybody on the other side of your trade is, which is probably it more often than he or she. Well done to the HFT guys on that one. So there we go. Nothing terribly interesting to look at on the UC, and we come over to gold, because gold is always kind of interesting on this, and here's last week's move in there. And what have we got? We've got our pivot, and we've got another little pivot in here, an intermediary pivot. Price comes back into. So nothing to see. I mean, you would think with the markets going absolutely crazy that gold would take a pounding upwards rather than downwards. You know, it's a bit odd, but nonetheless, here we are. Last week's market insanity. Just the currency markets doing what they usually do. And in a year, you won't even be able to find this week's crashes and all of that excitement when you go look back through a daily chart. You just won't even be able to find it. Anyway, so this has been Insanity Industries, and for the first time I get to try out the tagline and see how it sounds. So this is Brendan of Insanity Industries, teaching you to make more money by sucking less.